Thank you all for coming today and those that have joined us on Zoom. I hope everybody can hear us. If they cannot, say something in the chat and I don't know, maybe we'll do sign language. I don't know. We can hear. All right. Sweet. Shelly said we can hear. All right, cool. So, big hot topic, Ribbon, all cash offers. Most people that are here already understand, what the process or what the program is. Does anybody have any quick questions on, hey, what am I here for? No. Okay. So this is Hannah. She's the account executive for Ribbon, and I'm just here to facilitate the meeting. We're sitting real estate with Chrissy Hagler in the back. So yeah, Hannah, if you want to go ahead and take over. Let me close that. All right.
Beautiful. Well, welcome and good morning, everyone. I'm so glad you all could join me this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your, what I'm sure are quite busy schedules right now, to take a moment and learn about Ribbon and how, you can use this as another tool for your tool belt. As Creighton said, my name is Hannah Funk. I'm one of the client trainers here with Ribbon. So what we're really going to be talking today is what is Ribbon and how can you leverage it? But I'd love to start off with our mission. Our mission here at Ribbon is to make homeownership achievable for all. We truly want this to be a business opportunity for you, for your clients, and really figure out a way to create the strongest offer potential for your buyers, as well as the opportunities that this can bring for your sellers. This is not just a benefit for your buyers, but also why these offers can be advantageous to your sellers as well. So what we're going to be discussing is, first and foremost, how Ribbon Cash can empower your buyers, as well as what the program is, what the process is in using the program, as well as where to get started. I will do a demo of the agent dashboard so you know what to expect once you get signed up for your account. So before we get into that, questions. Chrissy popped it into the chat already, but for those of you who are sitting in the room together, it's not going to be as easy to drop it into the chat. Feel free to write down any questions that come up as I'm talking. We will have a Q&A section at the end of the information portion, but if you're anything like me, if I don't write it down or type it out as it happens, I typically forget. So please write down anything that you might have. For those of you joining on Zoom, please feel free to drop it into the chat. Again, Chrissy mentioned they're there to help with the chat. I will help as soon as we get into the Q&A portion of this morning. So just know that we will be here for that opportunity. So before we dive into what Ribbon is, I want to touch on the markets just briefly and what we're seeing out there right now. I'm going to stop for just a second. Is everything okay on the computer side?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. All right. So we're seeing this very frequently. It's a challenge for buyers to stand out in many, many markets right now. I can speak from experience. A year ago, when we bought the home that I'm currently sitting in, there were only 3 homes out of 800 to 900 homes in this area on the market. It was super competitive. We were not the buyers that could even get bids out, because by the time we would try, it was 20, 30, 40. Yes, there was even one that was 100,000 over asking. We simply couldn't even get bids out. We couldn't get our offers looked at to begin with. Some buyers are facing that same challenge today. And as we dive into buying season, once again, buyer demand is still there. Inventory is still relatively low. We're seeing it come up a little bit, but it's still competitive, and buyers are going up against cash-enabled buyers, iBuyers, institutional investors. And over the last 10 years, more than $1 trillion in housing has been purchased by those institutional investors. That's taking those opportunities away from your buyers. You likely are going up against multiple offers, buyers who need to time their transactions very strategically between their home sale and their purchase. And as their agents, you want to help them find that perfect home. But sometimes we need a little tool in our tool belt to help boost that ability. Ribbon is here to provide you all with that tool for your tool belt to help your clients make competitive offers in a challenging market. So what is Ribbon Cash? Well, simply put, it's a way to empower your clients with cash, but the ability to still close with their own mortgage financing. We know from research in the market that cash offers are 3 times more likely to win in multiple offer scenarios. Heck, even sometimes they don't get looked at if they're not cash offers. This just helps again with that boost period. But the ability to make a cash offer is not necessarily plausible for the everyday buyer. That's where Ribbon comes in to upgrade that traditional offer to cash, removing that home sale financial and appraisal contingencies, and a bonus, a guaranteed close after an acceptable inspection period. Might also be known as a due diligence period, depending on the language in your state. But Ribbon Cash is almost better than cash, right? Because a cash offer can still walk out that door, whereas a Ribbon Cash offer cannot once that acceptable inspection period has completed. Think of it again, not just from the buyer's agent perspective, but the listing agent. That's peace of mind for your sellers. They're going to make it to the closing table. And also for you as the agents, regardless of what side of the deal that you are on, whether it's the listing side or the buy side, at that point, you also have peace of mind because your commissions are guaranteed at that time as well. And we never take from your commissions. We truly want this to be a business growth opportunity for you. Ribbon Cash is a level of certainty that nothing is going to prevent the deal from moving forward, meaning you're empowered and enabled to close more deals. It's the kind of certainty in a transaction that we just don't see every day in real estate. So you might be wondering, what kind of buyers does Ribbon help? And the answer is truly all types of buyers. Our mission is to make homeownership achievable. We love to help first-time buyers, buyers in multiple offer situations, buyers who need to sell first, home sale delays, needing that competitive edge. We don't require that a buyer has a home to sell. So again, Ribbon can work with those first-time buyers as well as seasoned homeowners alike. Now, while we work with all types of buyers, there are certain types of homes that we can and cannot work with. So this is what we call our Ribbon Buy Box. I will show you where this information can be found in the agent dashboard once you get signed in. So you do not need to remember this by heart. And we're working on changing these numbers constantly and growing this for more opportunities. So the homes that we are able to work with are homes from 150,000 up to 1 million. We can go as low as 100,000 for townhomes and condos. Property needs to be on fewer than 4 acres of land, built in 1960 or later, or fully renovated. And we mean the major mechanicals of the home, not the cosmetics. And then it needs to be in a major metropolitan market. Now you might be wondering, what does that classify? That can be a lot of things. We have a very, very, very large list that details all of this out on our end. My best recommendation is to connect with your advisor. When you get signed into your account, you will be assigned a Ribbon advisor. They're local to your markets and know what areas are covered. But also, I highly recommend, if you're not sure, go ahead and add the property in when we send it in for valuation. Our valuations team will let you know if it's in that metropolitan market or not. So just a couple of quick ways to kind of bypass that very, 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 very long list. Now, so on the flip side, some of the homes that we do not work with: foreclosures, short sales, mobile, manufactured, modular homes, and multifamily. And then one last thing to keep in mind, we know you might be working with some buyers that are looking for an investment property. That is fantastic, but Ribbon Cash must be used for their primary residence. Now, the big question we always get is, what's it going to cost, right? This sounds great, but what's it going to cost? We totally understand pricing is a factor in this, and we are going to talk about it. I want to factor it into a couple buyer stories, real buyer stories that have been successful using the Ribbon program. And then I'll summarize the pricing again after the stories. The solution that's utilized will determine the pricing, which is ultimately determined based on who is closing on closing day, whether that be your buyer or Ribbon. This will make a lot more sense as we dive into the stories. So what those two stories that we're going to cover are essentially overviewing the two different main solutions that we have under our Ribbon Cash umbrella. These aren't the only things that we have, and I will address those later, but the first story is outlining our Ribbon Boost product. The second is outlining our Ribbon Reserve product. And again, I'll summarize the two programs and the pricing side of things at the end. But again, the biggest difference you're going to see between these two scenarios and solutions is who is closing on the home on closing day, your buyer or Ribbon. So let's dive into our first story. We have our client David and our agent Tara. David's been searching for a home for months and has been outbid multiple times by other cash offers. He's feeling a little bit of defeat. He's a first-time home buyer looking for that perfect first home. And He's fallen in love with this house here and would be devastated if he did not win. So his agent Tara had heard about Ribbon from other real estate professionals in her network who'd been successful with the program. She introduced the idea to David to boost his offer and up to cash to give him a better chance of getting the offer accepted. So what did that process ultimately look like? First and foremost, Tara created an agent account at Ribbon, which you will all have a chance to do here in just a little bit. She then went in and added David as a buyer, uploaded his pre-approval letter from his lender. Our buyer underwriter team at that point will verify the information on that letter and grant what we call, what you see here at the bottom, as David's buying power. That number, or essentially what the buying power is the maximum amount a buyer can offer for a Ribbon cash offer. Give me just a moment. Something's going on with clear all drawings. There we go. All right. Much better. Okay. So what that buying power means is the maximum amount that David can offer on a Ribbon cash offer. It's going to match the amount that is set by the lender on the pre-approval. Give me just a moment, everyone. I'm going to turn off annotations as I see some things happening here. There we go. All right. Again, that number is going to match the approval amount set by the lender. We are not a mortgage company, so it's all really going to stem from what your lender sets as that amount. So once Tara added David as a buyer and that pre-approval letter is uploaded, the next step is adding the properties in which David would like to make a Ribbon cash offer on. So Tara added that property that David was in love with, as well as any others that he might be interested in. Once that property's in, within 24 hours, our internal valuations team here at Ribbon, made up of former appraisers and valuation experts, generate a desktop valuation, providing two numbers. The Ribbon value, this is Ribbon's estimated sales price based on market activity. And the second one is the max Ribbon value. That's the maximum offer amount that Ribbon will fund on that particular property. So every property will receive two valuations. Once this is completed, once that valuation has been completed, Tara was able to move into the final step of writing the offer, and she did so in our platform. The platform walked Tara through the entire process, assisting in creating the purchase agreement that you already use in your everyday transactions, and then adding a couple additional documents, which I'll address here in just a moment, as well as allocating the Ribbon fee into the contract deposits, typically earnest money or due diligence. So those additional documents that Tara included was first, this document here is the Ribbon offer addendum. This is what's added to the already built purchase agreement that you use anyways. This is what upgrades it to cash, removes those contingencies, and sets Ribbon as the backup buyer if needed. And because Ribbon is being set as the backup buyer, she also included this proof of funds document. This is displaying the ability for Ribbon to step in and purchase the home if needed. And then lastly, she included this cover letter. We understand not everyone is familiar with Ribbon just yet, so this cover letter is there to provide a high-level overview and really support the conversation with the listing agent and the seller, really explaining what a Ribbon cash offer is and why it's advantageous to the seller. So Tara upgraded David's offer to cash through the program, attached that addendum and those additional documents, generated the offer, and congratulations, David, his offer had been accepted. He added his Ribbon fee to his contract deposits, which was 2.5% of the purchase price. 2.5% is the Virginia percentage. If there is anybody else that works in other states as well, this fee does vary by state. And I will share a pricing page from our website that details state by state what those fees look like. But for Virginia, it's 2.5% of the purchase price. So he allocated those into the contract deposits. Now we enter into the inspection period. Ribbon does require a minimum 7-day inspection period, but any vendor can be used. So David was able to use Tara's preferred inspector, Once that report was completed, Tara uploaded the report to Ribbon, and our internal inspections team reviewed the report to assess for any Ribbon required repairs that need to be completed. We're looking for safety, structural, health, or hazardous items, truly ensuring the safety of the home for the buyer. There were no Ribbon required repairs for David, so we reached the end of that inspection period, and congratulations, it's a guaranteed close and guaranteed commissions. But also during that inspection period, David was able to lock in his mortgage financing. So David's going to be the one closing on the home on closing day. So we fast forward to closing day. David purchases the home using his own financing through his lender. And what Ribbon does is we credit back the difference, that 1.5% difference on the settlement statement. This is the Ribbon Boost solution. Okay. Again, I'll summarize these again at the end. So I want to dive into our next story with our agent Bill and our clients Robert and Jane. Robert and Jane have an expanding family of dogs, more coming soon. So they're rapidly looking for a home to accommodate their growing fur family. They wanted to buy their new home first, so they have a home as they sell their current home. They wanted to avoid moving twice, paying for a storage unit, timing those two transactions while also working full time, and trying to keep the house clean while showing, working, and living in it. They found this beautiful home that you see here that would be perfect, and they need a solution. Thankfully, their agent Bill has known Robert and Jane for years and has leveraged Ribbon in the past in a similar situation with another client. So Bill proactively presented Ribbon as a tool that Robert and Jane could use during their original buyer consultation. Bill explained that Ribbon can purchase the home on their behalf. Once they sold their previous home, locked in their financing, they can purchase their new home back from Ribbon at the original contract price. They loved it. They said, let's do it. So Bill followed the exact same process that Tara did for David, adding the buyer, getting the buying power with the pre-approval letter, property valuations, generating the offer, allocating the Ribbon fee into the contract deposits. And once again, Robert and Jane's offer had been accepted. They entered into that inspection period once again, and all came back clear. Now we fast forward to closing day, and here's the big difference. Because Robert and Jane have not sold their prior home yet, Ribbon in this scenario is stepping in to purchase the new home on their behalf at closing. From here, Robert and Jane have up to 180 days or 6 months to rent this property from Ribbon as they sell their previous home at a rental amount that is prorated to the day. Once they're able to sell that previous home, lock in their financing, they were able to purchase the home back from Ribbon at the original contract price. So I want to talk about that rental period for just a minute. That rental period, like I said, it's prorated to the day. Robert and Jane only needed to rent the home for 35 days. So they only paid rent for 35 days. That rental amount will be shown as a monthly rental amount up front. So once that property valuation is complete, the monthly rental amount on that property will also be shown at that time. So you'll be able to have that conversation with your buyers very early on to ensure that this is a plausible option for them. But again, if they only need it for 35 days, that's all they're going to end up paying rent for, and any difference would be credited back to them. One other thing I like to make sure I highlight here is HOAs. It's always good practice to check for any HOA rental or leaseback restrictions to ensure the new home will allow for the rent back from Ribbon to clients. Some HOAs have restrictions on this, but some will grant acceptances. So it's just good practice to check into this because if the HOA says absolutely not, this would not be something they would be able to leverage Ribbon in purchasing that home for that reason. So, as promised, let's summarize the two stories and the two solutions that we just talked about. So diving back into our first story with David on the left, David wanted to upgrade to be more competitive. So they used our Ribbon Boost product, meaning David's offer was upgraded to cash, but he was able to close with his own financing at closing day. Ribbon Boost accounts for about 80% of the deals, and it's definitely the most preferred solution for buyers. And the fee is only 1% of the purchase price. Now I'm highlighting that for a reason, 1% of the purchase price. But why did David pay the full 2.5%? Because, and you see it on the very bottom, it might be a little small, the full Ribbon Reserve is collected in contract deposits. So we collect that full 2.5%. If you're in Virginia, for other states, I will drop a link in the chat in a little bit. But that 2.5 is always collected up front, because at that point when the offer is being made, we don't know who's going to be closing on the home just yet. Once that financing is locked in, that's what triggers the deal to become a boost deal. And then Ribbon will credit back that 1.5% difference on the settlement statement on closing day. Okay. The boost is a great option for first-time buyers, buyers that need that bit of competitive edge, especially in multiple offer situations. I like to throw it as a pun. It does help boost the offer and really get it a better chance at getting looked at. Now, Robert and Jane's story on the right, you can think of it as buy before you sell, right? Robert and Jane, they wanted to purchase their new home before they sold their current. And they needed something that would allow for that. And that's a tough thing to find. But their agent Bill had leveraged this program before for another client. And so he recommended it as an option to buy before you sell. This is known as Ribbon Reserve. Great option for buyers who need to time those two transactions, need to conveniently move prior to selling. I like to highlight relocations, right? For those that might be moving in from another state, this might be a great option for them. It allows for the buyers to really be able to sell for maximum value and really showcase the best in their current home, but not have to be in it during that time. So you can think of Ribbon Reserve like a modern day bridge loan. So what happens then is Ribbon is placed on the deed. The buyers are able to rent the home from Ribbon for up to 180 days at a prorated rental amount to the day. And again, that amount is known up front. So with that, I'm getting a message around the fee for North Carolina and Virginia. I will show the pricing page in just a little bit. The prices all vary and I don't have it off the top of my head, but I will show you all what the North Carolina fees are at the end when we get into the demo side of things. So with the Ribbon Reserve, again, for Virginia, it's 2.5%. I'll show you what both Virginia and North Carolina look like here in just a little bit. But these are not the only offerings and solutions that we have. All Ribbon Cash offers include appraisal protection, where we will cover an appraisal gap so your client can still get their dream home and waive that appraisal contingency. We know the appraisal still has to happen from the lender's perspective, but if an appraisal gap does happen, we are there to help support that. And that appraisal protection varies by state. So speak with your Ribbon advisor if this is a situation that you get into, and they can support you through that conversation. Now we have a third offering under our umbrella called Ribbon Rescue. This is really think of it as the 11th hour deal, the save the deal. This is when you're already under contract on a deal that is not a Ribbon deal already, but it's at risk of falling through. What Ribbon can do is step in on behalf of the buyers and purchase the home on their behalf at closing day, very similar to Reserve, and rent it back to them again up to 180 days. The fee is a little bit higher because Ribbon is stepping in last minute. For Virginia, it's 3.25%. I will showcase the North Carolina when we get there in just a little bit. Just know that that's another solution if you do get into a pinch with a deal that's already under contract. Now, the middle one you see, new construction. We love to work with new construction, and builders love to work with us as well. The process is just a little bit different. Some builders do not accept our offer addendum, so sometimes Ribbon has to be added as a co-buyer, as well as the process in getting the property valuation can take a little bit more work between you all and the Ribbon advisor to just making sure the right comps and pictures that are available from the builder can be reviewed. But again, if this is something that you have buyers that are interested in new construction, reach out to your ribbon advisor and they can walk you through what to expect. And then the last thing that you see here is Ribbon Cash Plus. This is an opportunity that will enable your buyers, you and your buyers, to write highly competitive offers above and beyond the amount that Ribbon estimates the value of the home to be in today's market. So what that essentially looks like is every property will receive 2 valuations. The first one will be the Ribbon value. That's Ribbon's estimated sales price based on market activity. Then the second value is that max Ribbon value. That's the maximum offer amount that Ribbon will fund on that given property. So they're very specific to each property that is generated. First and foremost, the steps don't change at the beginning. Determine the offer in which your buyers would like to make on that particular home. If the offer is up to the Ribbon value, the Ribbon Cash program remains the same as we just discussed. If your client would like to write an offer above the Ribbon value and up to the max Ribbon value, they can power up their offer with Ribbon Cash Plus. Now, there are additional fees to leveraging Ribbon Cash Plus. Your buyers can choose to pay that now or pay that later. So what that essentially sounds like, or what that is if your buyers choose the pay now option, the cost is $250 for every $1,000 above the Ribbon value. So like round numbers, let's say the Ribbon value is $500,000. Your buyers would like to make an offer at $502,000. If they choose to pay now that additional fee, that fee would be $500. Okay, and it's collected upfront and it's non-refundable. Okay, so it's $250 for every $1,000. It's collected alongside the Ribbon fee, that 2.5% for Virginia, payable in those deposits or seller credits at the time the offer is written. That's the pay now. If your buyers choose the pay later, fees are deferred until a future sale or cash out refinance event and are based on the additional amount of funding that Ribbon provides upfront to close on the purchase of the home and on the home's appreciation value over time. Again, these are in addition to that Ribbon fee that we discussed earlier, but that's a quick synopsis of what the pay now versus pay later with Ribbon Cash Plus is. Again, if they go up to the Ribbon value, nothing changes. If they go beyond the Ribbon value and up to the max Ribbon value, that's when the pay now versus pay later question comes into play. As you dive into creating offers in the system, you will be walked through the process. You also have your Ribbon advisor available to you to help you in explaining that with your buyers if you have any additional questions. But we will also include this flyer that explains the Ribbon Cash Plus program in the follow-up email that I send to Craig later today. Now, Ribbon is a wonderful benefit to your clients, but it's an incredible benefit to you all as well. You want to be the greatest assets for your buyers and be their go-to person. You become the problem solver. You're creating this opportunity to bring differentiated solutions to the table based on their situations, creating that stronger referral opportunity, providing that competitive edge. And truly, I think a big point is you become knowledgeable of the options in the market for both your buyers and sellers. Again, this is advantageous to buyers, absolutely, but it's also advantageous to your sellers as well. Think that guaranteed close. And for you all, that guaranteed commission. So what are your next steps walking away from today? Well, the first one you're going to have a chance to do here in just a moment is registering for a Ribbon account. That's where it all begins. After that, start adding those buyers, start uploading those pre-approval letters, and then begin adding any properties that your buyers might be interested in. This will begin that process, the sooner the better. So as promised, here is your opportunity to get signed up for an account. Let me get the chat open. So there is a QR code on the screen, but I'm also dropping a link in the chat for anybody who would prefer to do it on a desktop. I will send this link also in the follow-up email that I send to Craig later. So please know if you don't have the opportunity to do it right this second, that's okay. You'll receive this link again. So I'll give you all just a moment to do that. All right, so I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to jump into our demo environment. But first, I'm going to show you all the pricing page. I will also drop this link into the chat so you have it. But you can also find this on our website. I'll also send it in the follow-up email as well. So the pricing specifically for North Carolina for Ribbon Boost, again, that's 1% for all the programs, no matter the state. The Ribbon Reserve program for North Carolina is 2%, and then Ribbon Rescue is 3%. And then Virginia is 1%, of course, for Boost. Reserve is 2.5%, and Rescue is 3.25. All right, so this is what our demo environment looks like. So this is what you can expect to see when you get logged into your account and get started. It's going to say, welcome to the offer room, Shelly. Right underneath that is where your Ribbon advisor will be listed. You can click on their name and their information will drop down below. You can also find their information in the top right-hand corner where it says contact my Ribbon advisor. That same drop-down box will appear. We also list our business hours on here because you're on the East Coast. It doesn't make a huge change for you all. We do list these in Eastern time. But if there is anybody that moves around and does not stay on the East Coast, just keep in mind we do list our times in Eastern time. Now, you may walk away from today and say, this is great, but I need a refresh. Well, easiest place to go is right here in the How It Works tab. This How It Works tab will cover everything we just discussed and even more in detail. The FAQs page, I highly recommend everyone spend some time on the FAQs page. This covers a lot of the ins and outs of leveraging the program, some of the nuances that you might run into, just some general questions that you may have, as well as we have a resource center with guides and short videos to kind of give you a quick refresh as well. Now, once you're settled, you're ready to get started, that first piece is going to be adding your buyer. So first place you can do that is right underneath, ready to get started, where it says add a buyer. The other thing I recommend you become very familiar with is your My Buyers tab in the top left-hand corner. This page will be where all of your buyers, as you start to add them in, are going to be listed. You can also add a new buyer on this page as well. It's just going to ask for some general information: first name, last name, email, phone number. You can also add a co-buyer if applicable. We are not contacting your buyers. This is simply creating their general profile for you, not for us. We are not reaching out to them. Now, once they've been set up, and I'll show you one of my buyers, Mac Funk, who happens to be my dog. It's a pretty generic page, right? There's not a whole lot going on. We've created their general profile. That next step is going to be uploading that pre-approval letter from their lender. You can do so here in this Ribbon Cash box, where you select the black start button. It'll take you to the next page. And then this upload pre-approval box, take you to one more page. If it wants to be cooperative, there we go. This is where you'll upload that document from your desktop or even from your phone as well. Answer a quick question, and then you can move forward in requesting buying power. Now, once that's done, I'm going to show you one of my buyers who we've done that for, Megan. It's going to show as pending. Again, it's going to take about 1 day for that to turn around. But once that letter is in there, you do not have to wait to jump into the next step, which is adding a property. You can, but you definitely don't have to. When you're ready to add a property, you'll come here where this purple plus button is on that buyer's page. This pop-up box will always appear. This is that Ribbon buy box. So this is a reminder of the homes that we do and do not work with. So you'll never have to wonder what homes we work with. We will always remind you when you go to this page. You can paste the address in from the MLS, or you can enter it manually, whichever you prefer. Select next. It'll ask you to verify that the correct listing is being pulled, and then it will go into the pending stage like you see on these two homes here. Again, it takes about 24 hours for these to get turned around, but once they're turned around, these two values will be filled, and that monthly rental amount will also be listed underneath the ribbon value. So you'll know upfront what those values are, as well as what that monthly rent would be if Ribbon needs to step in and purchase the home for your buyers. Okay, now we get this question a lot. How many homes can I add? How many properties? As many as you'd like. There's no necessary limitation on this. If your buyers are not 100% sure that they are going to make an offer on a home, that's okay. Add it anyways. Especially as we are getting into the weekend, I'm sure your showing schedules are probably getting pretty full. The sooner you get these properties added, the sooner those valuations can get turned around, as well as those pre-approval letters and getting their buying power granted. Little pro tip, the earlier, the better. But of course, we get this question a lot. Sellers have some pretty tight timelines. How do I compete if it takes a business day to turn these around? Well, the good thing is we do have the ability to turn them around faster if necessary. We can expedite. Let your Ribbon advisor know what your timeline is and what that looks like. They will expedite it within our internal teams, and we can typically turn these around within 4 to 6 hours. Just keep that in mind. I know we're getting into the weekend, so offer times might be coming up quickly. I always recommend the sooner you get it in, the better, so that there are no potential hiccups in your offer timelines. So that's really what you can expect and where to get started in your account. So at this point, I'm going to jump back to this slide, and we're going to dive into the Q&A portion. I've seen many questions coming in the chat while I was talking, so I'm just going to scroll up really quickly and start from the top. So Linda asked, is there a minimum rental period after sale? Not necessarily. No, there is not, because it all comes down to how long does the buyer need to, if they have a home to sell, how long is that going to take, as well as making sure there's enough time to get the financing locked in. We do need at least, typically we ask for about 14 days to be able to get title and all the paperwork done, but it all depends on your unique situations. We don't necessarily have minimum rental periods. It's all dependent upon the buyer situation and the timing behind kind of what's the reasoning behind why they're renting from us first. So more case by case situation, but in a very simple term, we do not have a minimum rental period. Second question was, is there a penalty of any sort if the buyer wants to buy the home from Ribbon in less than 30 days, or if they're getting an FHA after the FHA waiting period? No, there is no penalty because we don't have a limit. Specifically, I'll talk about FHA since it was brought up. If you are working with FHA loans and you are dealing with specifically, I like to talk about the identities of interest side of things, because that's the 180-day requirement. If that becomes the case for one of your buyers where they have to rent for a minimum of 180 days, you might be wondering, can we still do it with Ribbon? And the answer, simply put, is yes. What we will do in that situation is we have to be notified first of the identities of interest being enacted. What that will do is we will automatically extend their lease to 210 days. And on the 181st day, they can start the offer process to purchase it back from Ribbon at that time. But we do not have a penalty if they want to buy the home in less than 30 days. Again, it's all dependent upon their requirements, their necessities, and their specific buyer situation. We answered the North Carolina fee. So does the Ribbon fee become the earnest money deposit? Great question, Chrissy. Here's, as long as the earnest money deposits equal that 2.5% for Virginia, 2% for North Carolina, that is the earnest money deposits, is the 2.5 or 2% of the purchase price. If your buyers would like to put more down, they can. They can put more in those earnest monies if they'd like, but they do not have to. So long as that number meets that percentage of the purchase price, that's all that is required to be put into those contract deposits. Let me just keep going. For rent, is there a minimum amount of rent due at the time of move-in? Yes, it depends on the particular property, of course, but they would pay their first month's rent the day before move-in. Basically, one day before closing is usually what we ask so that it doesn't slow down any timelines. They would pay the full first month's rent before closing day. And then again, if they use less than those 30 days that they're in the house, we would credit them back for any difference. Can you explain the pay later costs? Again, yes, Shelly. So what ends up happening with pay later? The fees are deferred until a future sale. So a future sale or a cash out refinance event. It's all based on the additional amount of funding that Ribbon provides upfront to close on that home and on the home's appreciation value over time. Now, there's a whole calculation that goes behind this. I don't want to go too into the weeds, but there is a cap on that home appreciation value over time. Now, if they live in that home for the full 30 years and they don't sell, they don't owe anything else. I think there's a $10 underwriting fee just to kind of clear out that contract. But if they stay in for the full 30 years, they don't owe us anything additional. But if, let's say, they sell that home in 10 years, whatever funding was provided by Ribbon to close on that home, the additional funding. So let's say it was $502,000, because we like that number from before. And we covered that $2,000 gap because it was over the $500,000 Ribbon value. Then it would be that $2,000 plus the percentage of the home appreciation value over time. Now, it's all going to be very dependent upon each property and each situation, but that's essentially what it's going to look like. The amount of funding Ribbon provides up front to close on the purchase, as well as percentage, a percentage of the home appreciation value over time. When you get in to begin writing offers, the system, the platform will actually explain all of that to you. So you'll see it step by step as you work through it. And also connect with your Ribbon advisor. If this is a situation that you're getting into, they can really help. They're the ones in the transactions alongside you, so they can really support what that looks like. I'm going to actually jump, Linda, I will come back to your question on the agreement because I saw Shelly sent another follow-up in. Does the buyer work directly with Ribbon to pay the $2.5 up front, and does it need to be paid once the offer is accepted? Great question. That 2.5% is not collected up front. It is paid into the contract deposits, just like any other earnest money deposits would. They're held in escrow. It does not get paid out to Ribbon until closing day. So none of that gets paid to us until closing day. Now, once the offer is accepted, the contract money is held in escrow. We do not touch it. We do not receive it directly until the end when the attorneys release it on closing day. Linda asked, can we see copies of the agreement the buyer signed so we can understand the fine print? Absolutely, yes. In the follow-up email I send to Craig and his team today, it will include a lot of additional documents. It is going to include all the documents that I talked about, minus your state purchase contract agreements, because those are ones you already have. But anything that's Ribbon-based is going to be included in that follow-up email. You can also find them on the website, but I will make sure that you all receive them when I send them over to Craig today. But yes, you will receive those. Okay, what other questions? All right. This is a great question. What happens if the contract falls through? Does Ribbon charge the 2.5%? Fantastic question, Chrissy. It all depends on when it falls through. If, regardless of what the situation is, if it's the seller or the buyer backing out, if that happens before the inspection period is complete, we are going to work as hard as possible to get the buyers their money back, depending on what happens. Ribbon is not going to collect that fee at that point because that's before we've reached that guaranteed close. Now, if we've completed the inspection period and we've guaranteed that closing commission, then yes, that 2.5% gets paid to us, even if the contract does fall through, just because at that point we've gone beyond Now, again, this is going to be very case by case based. We are going to work very closely with you all as well as the listing agent and seller to really work through negotiations depending on what was talked about. We don't want anyone to lose any money. But if we do go past that inspection period and it's that guaranteed close point and the buyer backs out, we are going to collect that 2.5%. Because at that point, we have to close on the home no matter what. Great questions, everyone. What other ones do you have?
Anyone in here?
We all have questions, yeah. Yeah, they're still coming up in the chat. Yep, I'm trying to put all in. Maybe I need to tell her they're coming in the chat.
I got a question for you. So, we talked about FHA and VA loans. FHA, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So FHA loans, the rule is that you can't purchase a home if it's been bought within the last 90 days. So technically, you wouldn't be able to close on that loan within the 90-day period at the 91st day, correct?
Correct, yes.
So how do you not get around, but what's that kind of look like?
Well, because that's because that's part of the loans requirement, we don't get around that. We work closely with the lenders to ensure that we're following all necessities and requirements based off the loan type and the loan requirements. So basically, if the flip rule does come into play and they do have to rent for those 90 days, we just have to be notified of that. And then on the 91st day, they can begin the offer process and purchasing the home back from Ribbon at the original contract price. So there's not necessarily a workaround. We just work with what the loan requires. And then as soon as it's available for them to purchase it back, we'll start that process right alongside them.
All right, same thing, same kind of pseudo question for the VA. I know that my company just put out recently that we can do VA loans. At first they were like no VA, no FHA because it was such a gray area.
Yep.
But obviously there's ways to do them. It's just they've been working hand in hand with Ribbon. My upper management has been working hand in hand with Ribbon to try and figure it out.
Yep.
And I know that the most recent thing for VA, they said that you all's fees would have to be paid outside of closing, meaning it could not be connected to the contract. Because we wouldn't really be involved. So can you kind of give me some clarity on that?
Oh, there. Okay. Sorry. You froze for just a second, but as far as, correct me if I missed anything. As far as VA goes, yes, some states do not allow with VA loans for our fee. It's non-allowable fees. So what ends up happening in that case is we create a separate invoice. We pull it completely from the contract. We create a separate invoice that is sent directly to the buyer, and we ask that it's paid at least 1 business day before closing day so that there is no delay. But that just essentially gets pulled completely from the contract. We work from basically a side conversation in getting that fee covered when it comes to the VA non-allowable fee types.
I have a question, Hannah. How many days does it take to close under the Ribbon program?
Traditionally, we ask for 14 days just because of title and all of the paperwork side of things and our teams. We can do them faster, but again, it's very case by case based, but typically we ask for at least 14 days. Yes, 14 business days.
So in the contract, when you're writing the offer, it will be termed as cash buyer.
I'm sorry, what was that?
When you're writing the offer in the contract, the type of financing, would it be termed as cash?
So essentially, and this is where I highly recommend, and Chrissy's question earlier, or no, Linda, about the agreements and reviewing them, I highly recommend reviewing the Ribbon offer addendum. That addendum is what is essentially going to cover the nuances and the ins and outs of what the offer means. It is being upgraded to cash, yes. But in the, I don't want to say it's fine print because it's really not fine. It's pretty well stated at the front, is that yes, we're upgrading it to cash, but the buyer still has the option to close with their own financing by closing day. That offer addendum covers all of that. So we like to, it's kind of a running joke, but you can think of it as it's a rich uncle backed deal. So it's a cash backed deal with that guaranteed closing commission. So it is being upgraded to cash, but still allows the buyer the option to close with their own financing by closing day if they're able to.
And the cost of that is 1%, correct?
If they close with their own financing by closing day, yes, 1% of the purchase price. That's when it becomes that boost deal.
Yeah, and if they do not, then it's 2.5%.
Yes, for Virginia, 2% for North Carolina.
So once we got the closing date down as marked out as 14 days, but then in the middle of the contract, the buyer is able to secure finance or it's working out, but it's gonna take more than that 14 days. So what happens then? What's considered the closing date?
It's all going to depend on the conversation on what's negotiated into the contract. So if, you know, or if the buyer is able to lock in their own financing, then it's going to depend on the lender and making sure they have enough time to lock in financing before closing day. Now, have extensions been requested before in the past? Yes. It's not always needed, but it's just going to depend on what closing date contract agreements were made. I always recommend work very, very closely with your lender on timing and, you know, the offer, or excuse me, the closing date in that offer period, because they're the ones that need the time to be able to lock in that financing. So we want to make sure we're giving them enough time. So it just kind of depends on the situation and the contract and what's negotiated. But I always say connect with your lenders and work very closely with them to make sure there's enough time negotiated for them to close before closing, or lock in the financing before closing day.
So if we were, let's say, me and Kendall had a deal going, and she's already signed up on your portal as a real estate agent or realtor, and I sign up as a lender, right? I have to sign up as a lender to be able to, for this whole deal to work out, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say we've done all those things and we get a contract, John Smith's under contract for 500,000. And then, you know, they want to use the 1% deal because that's where I'm involved. So how does that kind of look? Do I just, it goes through my company normally, like it normally would, and go from there?
Yes, so they would just work with you directly. You don't necessarily have to have a lender account to be able to work through this process with them. It's definitely going to make it a little bit easier, just so you can see exactly where it's at in the process. But the your agents, you all can communicate to the lender, or to Craig, what is going on in the deal, and they can take care of it from there. And then just communicating with the Ribbon advisor and letting them know, hey, we have financing locked in. Hey, this, you know, this situation's coming to play. Whatever kind of situations, you don't have to have an account, but your process does not change. The only thing that really kind of comes into play now is there's just a couple additional documents from the Ribbon side that get added to the purchase agreement, but otherwise we're trying to simplify the process.
So does it go through y'all's underwriting at all at any point if we're doing the 1%?
No, we do not do. So we have a buyer underwriter team, but that is simply to review the pre-approval letters. We don't have a mortgage arm at all. So that part of it is completely with you all.
So do I send you all the documents that they sent me, or do I just send you a pre-approval letter?
Pre-approval letter is all that's needed from your perspective at the beginning.
What about after we get a ratified contract?
Once that contract has been accepted, if it's done outside of our platform, we just have to be notified of it. So the Ribbon advisor would need to be notified. And then what that essentially does is it just begins the timeline part. We get the, excuse me, blanking on the words. Agent needs to set up the inspection and any other, appraisals and whatnot that need to be done on the home within that inspection period timeline that's set in the contract. And then again, it's operating the same as the transaction and just keeping the Ribbon advisor apprised. As soon as that inspection report is complete, uploading it to Ribbon, that has to be done by the agent. And then, the process just kind of moves forward as it normally would in any other transaction. It's just keeping another party involved as far as the conversation and any questions that come up. And then once we get towards the period where you are able to lock in the financing for the for the buyer, that is when we would flip the deal to boost. So then it would be a conversation to the ribbon advisor just saying, hey, financing's locked in, here's what we have, and then it becomes a boost deal. That's when it flips to the 1%. Then we work on that settlement statement credit back to the buyer.
Would the inspection be for informational purposes only, or would there be a PICRA involved, or what? Does that matter?
So the inspection, that report does have to be uploaded to our teams. We have an internal team that has to review them for those ribbon required repairs. The inspection is the only thing that cannot be removed from contingencies. But we do not complete those.
What's the turn time on something like that? Say we put the inspection report in Monday morning.
It's typically going to be about 24 hours. If it needs to be done faster, we just need to let the ribbon advisor know.
So would y'all put out a PICRA or work with hand in hand with the realtor to create a PICRA or PICRA, whatever?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would Ribbon work hand in hand with the realtor to create the PICRA? Or would it be just like you say these are the repairs that need to be made and then you give it to the agent and then the agent creates the PICRA and gives it to the seller?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you right now.
So basically, it sounds like what he's trying to say, what protection does the buyer have for any inspection related repairs? Like, does Ribbon handle that, or do we handle that in negotiating with the listing agent and the seller?
It depends on what comes back in that inspection. The buyer can absolutely negotiate any repairs that they would like to have completed. But from Ribbon's perspective, we're only looking at the ribbon required repairs. So safety, structural, hazardous, and health. Now, the two big scenarios here that separate is going to be if Ribbon is closing on the home on closing day, those ribbon required repairs that we identify based off the report have to be completed before closing day. If the buyer is closing on the home, they do not have to be completed. It all comes down to the negotiation with the seller at that point. They are 100% available to negotiate what they want to be fixed from the seller's perspective and the buyer's perspective. We do not get involved in that. It's only anything that we flag as a ribbon required repair that we will stay involved in the conversation in getting repaired unless the buyer is closing on the home. Now, I know that gets into the weeds a little bit more, but we are only looking at those ribbon required repairs. And it does, some states have certain things we have to look for, but that's all going to vary by state. And I would highly recommend talking to your advisor. I cover all the states that we're in, so I'm not very familiar with all of the inspection specifics, but your ribbon advisors are. Did that answer that question?
Well, in terms of documenting it, so if Ribbon is going to proceed with the transaction and there are certain repairs that you guys require in order for us to move forward in the process, the PICRA will be the form that we generally use to say, okay, these things have been taken care of. Yes. So would Ribbon handle that part, or does the agent need to handle that with the buyer and seller?
The agent needs to handle it and just communicate it with Ribbon. That's all.
Okay.
Any more questions inside? Yes, ma'am.
I'm working on putting it in there. But so in the state of Virginia, buyers are allowed to release from the contract based on HOA or condo documents, anything that they don't like in there. So those are not typically ordered until after the home inspection. So if we get the condo and HOA docs and the buyers are like, I cannot live in an association that might cause on my dog and make my dog be removed if he's barking too much, I can't buy this place anymore. Are they still required to pay the ribbon fee, or will Ribbon work with them to get out of that, because it is a valid exit for the contract?
Did you catch that, Hannah?
I think so. And this is not a situation I've ever heard of happening before. I'm not super familiar with the condo side of things. I would recommend reaching out to your ribbon advisor. I'm trying to see if one of my teammates jumped on this morning. I don't think so. Let me see if I can get some clarity on that, and I'll send in my follow-up email to Craig, and I will put that in my follow-up email to see how we work with that. My guess is that it's going to be one of those, we're going to work very closely with the buyer depending on that situation. But once we reach that guaranteed close, that's where it becomes a guaranteed sale, meaning we have to close on the home no matter if the buyer wants to buy the home anymore or not. So typically the answer would be yes, we are going to collect the fee no matter what. But it depends on, there are certain types of situations where we can help. But I can't, just from what I know, it would be a locked in deal because we've passed the inspection period. But I will look into that a little bit more with my team, and I will send in my follow-up email, or I will copy in my business development manager that's familiar in Virginia, and see if he might be able to answer that question as well. And I apologize, everyone. I know we started a little bit late. I do need to go here pretty soon. I have another training, but I want to make sure I answer as many of your questions. And I know I saw a couple drop in. When writing an offer, I'm assuming we can request the seller to pay the 2.5%, just like we would ask for closing costs. Yes, you can ask them to do that. I know it's not very common right now in some markets that request is being done, but yes, it can be paid by the seller.
So if anybody has, if they want to put their email in the chat, anybody that's online, put their email in the chat so they can get the email that Hannah's going to be giving out. I think does anybody else here have any questions? I think
Where do we send the rest of our questions to? Yeah, where do we send the rest of our questions? Because we gotta go.
yeah. Can I hand out your email or does that work? Or
So what I'm going to actually, I think the easiest thing, I am not your best resource. I say that in pure honesty because I'm from the training side of things. So I'm not in the transactions. Your Ribbon advisors, once you get signed up for an account, they're going to be your go-to person, but also your business development manager in Virginia. His name is Mark Arnold. He'll be copied on the email that I send out. You can respond to those emails. It's going to come from Ribbon Education. I'm going to copy our team on it. So you can respond directly to that email and they can support you best. But your Ribbon advisor is going to be your best go-to person because they're local to your markets and can really help with some of the ins and outs of your state specifics.
that makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. So as long as we hit reply all. All right. Any other quick questions? We covered a lot of information. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you.
Your training and everything. And thanks for everybody that joined us online. I appreciate everybody coming and thank you again. And yeah, make sure you put your emails in the chat if you want to get any of the additional information that we have kind of discussed here. All right.
Wonderful. Thanks, Craig. And thanks for hosting me and have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah.
Don't have
All right.
Don't have that.
Captain Mortgage out.
Don't have that. Don't make it yet. I want everybody.
Yeah, we're not gonna end it yet. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Christy. And Michelle. Thank you all very much for coming. Calling for a home loan, pre-approved worldwide. Post it up. Captain Mortgage.
Don't go over anything without us, Craig.
What'd you say, Shelley?
I said, don't go over anything without us.
Oh, yeah.